Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm pleased to be joined today by Dave Everett, UKIP candidate for Wolverhampton South West. Dave, how did you get into politics and why have you become a candidate for the UKIP party? Why not the Labour Party or the Conservatives?
Well, to be fair, I'm not one that actually just decided at a minute's notice. I researched. First of all, let me explain why I looked into UKIP or other parties. Is the fact I noticed, because I'm actually at the coal face dealing with regular people who suffer the austerity, dealing with people that talk about problems, and I'm in a business that actually directly deals with this type of person. I continually witnessed, heard points of view which I think, in my opinion, my personal opinion, needed to be represented. And then I looked at and I researched parties. I looked at all parties. I thought UKIP had quite a number of policies, and by the way, I don't agree with all.
Yes.
But I agree with most.
If we can come on to some of the policies, because UKIP are in the news on a regular basis.
On a regular basis.
And they have got this label now as a racist party,
yes.
a party of anti-immigration.
Yeah.
And is that your stance? Are you
None whatsoever.
anti-immigrant?
No, first of all, in my part-time job, I'm still involved with representing all groups. I'm still involved with the Market Association, the Market of Birmingham, representing all ethnic groups. Now, let me make this clear also. Racism the word racism is being misused. UKIP have a policy, and the policy is the control of immigration, the management of immigration. It isn't that we're anti and we are racist. We are looking at the control and proper control of immigration into this country.
And how do you propose to do that? What's the party policy? Is it limited to numbers or based upon certain countries that you want to limit?
No, there's a principle on the benefit of each immigrant, and each immigrant should be, as in other countries, and this takes place in Canada and Australia, is that there are rules, regulations that are introduced to, one, dictate the value of that immigrant into the country. Now, I'm saying to you, I welcome, and I genuinely say, I welcome immigration, but a controlled immigration which will be beneficial for all.
Can we talk about the Sikh community, who have a large presence in your board, in your consistency of Wolverhampton South West? Have they had a positive, their immigrants to the Wolverhampton area in the 60s? And what's been their effect on Wolverhampton?
I've worked with quite a number of members of the Sikh community. I welcome, and I say this not for the benefit of this programme, but from an honest opinion. The Sikh community adopt this attitude of openness, fairness, and more importantly, they have a work ethic. And that's a point which is important to this country. They have been a true benefit to this country. Their approach to life is that of, we seek to improve, we seek to work with and adapt to. And that to me is an excellent policy which we could use as an example. I'm not saying we should, because I don't think there should be an interfaith relationship or comment.
But which communities do you think have not done so well, and why?
I really can't answer too much on that, on the basis that there are quite a number of communities that still remain segmented and sectioned, and that's segregated. But it's a relationship which, in my opinion, has and is being created by themselves as well as helped by the community.
And what do you, if you came to power as a UKIP MP, how would you intend to deal with that perceived issue?
Education. The process, as far as UKIP is concerned, is we welcome any immigrant that is an advantage to this country. That's the question answered immediately as far as racism. Secondly, and I do accept the importance of education. I do accept the principle that we as a country have to accept the points and relationships of the faiths. We have to be educated.
Yes.
And in reverse, we work with, as a group, we are, whether we like it or not, a country that is part of an association, part
of Europe.
Well,
if we come on to Europe, the European Union,
yes.
would you like to stay in the European Union or not?
No, I wouldn't.
Would you like us to be an isolated island again?
Absolutely no, and in fact, it's rather strange. This we are listening to the PR of the larger political groups. Europe has little to offer.
But
It controls business. It controls trade. What we're looking for is to withdraw from Europe and open up a policy of free trade. Ironically, if you look at India, for example, India is an expanding nation. It's a nation that has taught itself, utilised, taken advantage of, and is moving forward a damn sight quicker than most other countries in the world. Now we have this option, for example, by withdrawing from a restricted area of trade within Europe, to actually deal more and work more and trade more
internationally
with international and on an international basis.
We've talked about segregation and integration, and isn't it right for the UK to be integrated in a part of Europe in terms of cultural necessity and cultural ties? And we've talked about how harmful it can be if certain communities segregate themselves away. Isn't UKIP's policy similar to that, which you've complained about? Segregation is not good. We don't want to be segregated and cut off from Europe. We are part of Europe, whether we like it or not.
I accept the principle. What I don't accept is the fact the restrictions that we're actually controlled by Europe. Europe won't dictate a policy to sever links with the UK. For example, we actually trade less into Europe. Europe trades more into the UK. We have facilities, we have companies. Let me give you an example. Companies like Mercedes, like BMW, like Volkswagen.
Yes.
There's going to be a continual trade policy between Europe and the UK, and vice versa. But it isn't going to be at the cost of the UK. It allows us then the principle of trading with, and I say this genuinely, continuing trade with Europe, but allowing us the privilege of trading on a more national basis, an international basis.
I understand. And there's a Sikh faith school now in Wolverhampton.
Yes.
What's your view of free schools? The Conservative government have made great strides with free schools.
Yes.
And several Sikh faith schools have been established across the country. So the Sikh community have welcomed these, have been a positive step forward. What's your view on Sikh faith schools and free schools particularly? Would you support this work or not?
I first of all, I've quite enjoyed the campaigning for this constituency. I'm big enough to say I've actually been taught. I've actually learnt myself. And when hearing about this interview, I actually went out and spoke to a number of Sikh friends to get their opinion and also to hear mine and relate to. And in fact, my answer to your question is first of all, yes, I agree with free schools. I agree in principle on the basis of the ethos of the religion Sikhism is important. It's a base, it's a foundation,
yes.
It's a security. And therefore, that's part of an educational process. But I would also say with the introduction of the British curriculum as such, from an educational point of view, put the two together you get quite a good adult at the end of that. Someone who's appreciative of the country, the religion, and what, more importantly, and I say this again, which I found genuinely is the respect that that individual will eventually come from that education.
You are supportive of the...
I'm supportive
the
in general,
school,
and more importantly, I feel as though, again, the policy of the grammar school should be reintroduced. Why? Because it gives kids from all backgrounds the opportunity to attain an educational level.
Can we come on to your party leader, Nigel Farage,
Yes.
and his recent assertion that the race and sex legislation for workplace should be abolished? What do you think of that? He said there's no need for race laws anymore. Do you think that's a right view to take?
I think it's interpretation.
I think it's very clear what he said.
I think it means, to be honest with you, as Brown made the gesture many years ago, is the fact that we have to give importance to our own youth, to people that are educated and looking for positions, and the priority must be given to our own. Now, that's nothing to do with a racial aspect. That's nothing to do with a policy. That's to do with a common sense point of view.
What do you mean by our own, giving priority to your own?
For our next generation.
Yes.
The people of this country need to have incentive.
And they need the protection of legislation
They
against racism. And Nigel Farage has suggested that legislation is scrapped. That seems to be a very absurd view.
It needs rearranging as such. I don't think the word scrapped was used and that's a final comment. I don't think it went that far. I think the impression what we have to look into is that the newspapers that cover these reports want to add that extra couple of words to finalise a comment.
And that is an issue with UKIP because they are in the press quite a lot for negative comments, and Nigel Farage and other people. A UKIP MEP is in the press again today for commenting about Islam in a derogatory fashion. And UKIP does tend to have a negative image. Why is that?
I did see a comment where you said today. I read it last week, and if you're referring to an MEP, the MEP has made a comment which, again, I don't personally agree with. We have to accept there are certain, if I use the term very politely, members of the party, members that need at times, and this is applicable to all political parties, is that they should put their brain into gear before they use their mouth.
So
but I would say, there seems to be a fear, and if it's a criticism, let me be the first to criticise. UKIP need a strong, and I mean a strong, educational policy to encourage people to understand what UKIP are about. I think that's an important facet. But I do feel as though UKIP have been put under a microscope where comments have been made in the past, not necessarily the same wording, but the same meaning, but have been interpreted in a totally different vein.
Do you expect to get much support from the Asian or the Sikh community for UKIP nationally, bearing in mind its image problem with immigration, and it has been labelled as a racist party? Do you think you can expect much support from the Indian community?
I'd take exception, because even you in the question are inferring, and I'm being very polite, but you're inferring there is a racist attitude. I will emphatically state today, there is not a racist attitude within UKIP. if you call the management of immigration, the control of immigration, that has an effect, by the way, that has an effect on everyone, whatever the nationality, whatever the creed, we are suffering the consequence of over-immigration. What we must do, that is not a racist comment. Where the racism comes in is the past. We're not looking at racism, we're looking at
Are you looking
control.
to repatriate? Is that part of the UKIP policy to
I think it's a case. What we must do, and this is an individual point of view of a UKIP member, we must start controlling immigration. We must look at the aspect of how, when individuals have come into this country and how they've come into this country. We must look at the aspect of what we have to do, one, to manage, two, to control, and more importantly, look at, without making a silly statement as UKIP decide to do this, no. UKIP want to look at the situation and adapt accordingly.
Yes.
Management of this country has been ignored now for 20, 30 years. UKIP have come out with some honest, clear management proposals, but they're being put under the heading of, and I say with respect, my friend,
yes,
you actually, because you as
the perception.
The perception you have.
That's right.
And that's so wrong, sir.
But that perception is caused and generated by a lot of the comments and the things we see in the press coming from UKIP members. We had the lady in the south who said she couldn't get on with black people. So we have had a lot of these things coming from UKIP. They haven't been made up. They have come from a lot of the UKIP members.
I concede, and I'm big enough to admit parties have idiots within them. And that is...
Has UKIP got more than its fair share?
No, I would say that UKIP have, let me finish the whole sentence here, my friend. UKIP have suffered the consequence of idiots, yes. But so have the Labour Party, which have not been officially publicised. So have the Conservatives, which have not been publicised. The Lib Dems, the Greens. If you looked at the Greens' policy and manifesto, you would honestly ask the question, what land are we living in? But nobody makes that comment anymore, because it isn't the trend. The trend at the moment is UKIP. UKIP must be faulted, must be undermined.
Is UKIP a trend, do you think?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Is it a protest?
No,
is it a trend?
not at all.
For example, you're up against Paul
I am indeed,
and
sir.
Rob Maris.
Yes, sir.
And do you think you've got a credible chance of winning that seat?
I think my answer to you is I would like to think, yes, I have. I have no ill comment or criticism of Paul Uppel or Rob Maris. What I have a criticism about the Labour Party and the Conservative Party is that a vote for Paul Uppel or Rob Maris is a non-vote. Why? Because the Labour Party and the Conservative Party are being totally controlled by a few elitists in London. They're not listening to local interest or policy. They are more concerned with operating within a bubble within Westminster.
Yes. And what would you say to the local people that you want to represent in Wolverhampton South West? What's your message to the Indian and the Sikh community in your area? What would you say to them as if they were to vote for you? What would you do for them?
I would work with and continue, and I say continue. The Sikh community in Wolverhampton is strong. It's organised. It's working within. And all I'll say to you is I wish to continue and assist wherever I can. There are times where I think it's necessary to keep in touch with and work with all associations. Yes. But I think the Sikh community of all in Wolverhampton have, over the years, managed to arrange and facilitate their particular group, but work on the basis of that they work within the community. They work to gain, and I say this, They're one of the most organised groups within Wolverhampton. And I would say, carry on, please. But whatever assistance I can give and work with, I will certainly do.
That's great. Thank you very much to Dave Everett, the UKIP candidate for Wolverhampton South West, for joining Sikh Channel and giving his views to us today. And we wish him well in the forthcoming general election. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.